Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome back to TARTLEcast. You are here with Jason, Alex, and our special guest, Robert Seeger. I hope
Seeger.
Shame. We already got to shut the podcast down. I've already screwed it up. Robert's the CTO, CIO, and VP of Technology, Enterprise Resource Planning, Cloud Strategy and Implementation, IT Operations, Digital Transformation, and business speaker. And he works at Boomerang Carnets. Robert, welcome to TARTLEcast. Thank you for coming on. Please help explain that mouthful I just said over the microphone.
Yeah, well, that's not all my title.
That's not all? Hold on a second. Let me go get the dictionary.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about LinkedIn, right? You can, in your headline, you can put all kinds of different descriptors about yourself to hopefully give a full picture for someone who's coming on board. But technically, I'm a CIO, a Chief Information Officer. I've been a CTO as well. They're sort of interchangeable depending on the organization that you're working for. In Boomerang Carnets, we are in the financial services industry. That's in the temporary import-export industry. So we provide what are called carnets. Carnets are basically, real simply, a passport for merchandise. It allows merchandise to get in and out of a country without having to pay duties and put down money on them to make sure that you don't sell it when you go to a country, right? So we serve a lot in the production industry.
Yeah, so let's see if this makes any sense here for people who want to understand the layman's terms. I want to bring something over to a foreign border. Now, their government has no clue whether or not you're going to move this product in their own country, like essentially sell it for some sort of value. And what you're saying is this bond, this financial thing that you are creating, this security essentially, you bring that over to the government and they're like, hey, it's not going to be sold here. It's just a temporary thing that will be here in this country and it will be brought back to its home country of origin. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. So we deal a lot with production companies, news organizations, CNN, CNBC, Fox News, all those guys, carnet, all of their equipment that they go take into a foreign country to cover something. And they show this at customs. And what it does, it tells the custom agent that they're not going to sell this and try to get around taxation. They're going to bring it back, because if they don't, then we're paying on the bond, right? The bond's basically an insurance policy on that.
Right.
So it's,
that's absolutely
I never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I had never heard of it until you told me about it. So I feel learned now.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So I don't understand then. How is it that you move from putting bonds on material items into these ideas of like servant leadership? Where did you make this movement from chief information officer to, hey, let's talk about being the best leaders around? And if you're dealing with very international agents here, have you seen that sort of transition over into that work also?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always believed in servant leadership. In every team that I've ever managed or worked with, I think servant, in any organization for that matter, I think servant leadership is critical to the success of an organization. So when I join an organization, when I come on board, that's one of the things I immediately try to do is try to bring that servant leadership attitude to the organization itself. And hopefully, it either trickles down or trickles up, and people learn some things about it.
No, that's it.
Bob, what is
here we go.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. What is the definition to you of servant leadership?
Servant leadership is a leader that helps to empower others, right? So I don't know if you all know John Maxwell, but John Maxwell is a great author, and he's a great
teacher.
Like
500 books.
Yeah, exactly. Great teacher about servant leadership, and really what it's about, it's really empowering others so that you can help them be their best, right? And in turn, they help you as a leader be your best, right? Because as a CIO, right, or a CTO, you can't possibly know everything, right? You can't possibly have every single skill set that you need to run a technology organization, just as an example. So I like to hire and build a team that is much smarter than I am, right? That can fill the gaps that I have. And I like to empower them to be able to do that. And in the same token, I fill the gaps that they may have, right? I mean, typically when you're talking about people that are classically trained technologists, right? they kind of lack a few things. They tend to lack a little more social skills. They tend to be more introverted than extroverted
More
because
like
they're
an
focused
accountant.
on coding, right?
Yeah.
So I like to help fill that gap for them, help them bring them out of their shells, maybe give them a little more business acumen aside from the technology expertise that they have. And it's always my hope that my teams that I work with come out stronger than when they started with me. And
Then
and to me, that's servant leadership.
okay, thank you for defining that. It's almost as long as your title.
Yes. Well,
The
I get a little passionate, so I'll talk unless you cut me off.
no. Listen, we're all about the passion here. Sometimes we get too impassioned with what's going on. So that brings me back to the old saying, right? Surround yourself with people that are better than you.
Yep.
And the reason they say that is like not only are you, trying to elevate them, but you're also elevating yourself. It's a nice rising tide lifting all ships kind of scenario.
Exactly.
Now, through this servant leadership, through this teaching of the business acumen, is there any data that proves the value in taking on a servant leadership role? So you taking that time to teach these other aspects of business acumen to the prototypical technologists that you would be dealing with, have you seen benefits to that? Are the teams more efficient? Are there any numbers or data that actually supports this sort of effort you're putting in within the organization?
Oh, absolutely. I
Oh,
mean,
share, please share.
just as an example, when I joined the organization that I'm with currently, one of the first things I did was take a poll amongst all the users, saying, "How do you feel
Mm.
technology responds and supports you?" And the rankings were dismal, dismal. So I use that as a way to say, okay, here's how we have to grow as a team to get better. And currently, I do a poll every year now. Currently, right now, we're at 100%. We,
That's
we were
amazing.
from we were from single digits to 100%. Um, we also were working on antiquated technology, old technology. We were on an antiquated phone system because no one was listening to the users, right? We weren't
Mm.
empowering the users to speak, tech speak, so to speak, or to ask, speak up for what they needed. Within the first 6 months, we implemented a new phone system. Not only did we implement a new phone system, we did it about 30 grand under budget.
Yeah, that's
So, I mean,
phenomenal.
and that's because the team was empowered to speak up, right? They were empowered to give their suggestions, and they were empowered to drive things forward. And
How did you create that safe space for them to be able
Mhm.
to speak up?
you know it's frightening simple. Really, it really is. I mean, and it baffles me why more leaders don't just listen to their people, don't just have conversations with their people, bring them in, right? And trust me, I've worked in organizations where the leaders are the type that say, "I'm the COO, do what I say,"
Mm.
right?
I get that from him all the time.
Well, yeah, and that just shuts people off, right? Then they become afraid to come talk to you. They become afraid to give their opinions, and they're no longer satisfied in the workplace. I'll give you the perfect example. My lead network engineer had all these great ideas about transitioning from a physical data center that we had inside of our office to the cloud.
Mhm.
Never said that. Never talked about it until I sat down and talked to him and said, okay, what are you hoping to get out of this? And he said, we should be moving to the cloud. I said, great idea. I agree. Let's do it. And right now we're about a month away from having the entire organization transition to the cloud.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. And what benefits do you guys hope to find through that transition? So this is the way I've seen this. You go and have a direct conversation with an individual. Through that, you acquire data on what the individual is thinking or what they are planning to do next.
mhm,
From that, you can make an actionable decision, one that either saves you $30,000 under budget for a phone system or allows your company to be more efficient and resilient by moving it into a cloud-based structure for all of your enterprise systems.
exactly. Well,
Oh.
yeah, absolutely. And so for us, it got us our data center was filled with antiquated servers, right? Outdated servers. It was filled with outdated operating systems, right? That was going to cost us an incredible amount of money to bring up to speed, right? By transitioning to the cloud, now it's sitting in the cloud. It's sitting on the cloud's machines, sitting on the cloud's operating systems that are always up to date, always patched, always secure. We don't have to worry about it. We just have to worry about our applications that are on there, and we're taking care of that. because we have a couple of custom built applications that we use for order entry, basically. Right.
Yeah, and Bob, you said, because I asked you safe place, and you said it was, from what I'm getting at is just listening to, your teammates. Whenever you listen, is it a, because a lot of people think leadership is, do as I say.
Right.
And is it a lot of asking questions? Is it coaching? How do you approach that whenever you're listening to someone on your team?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both, right? So when you're listening, you have to listen with an empathetic ear. Number one, you always have to have empathy when you're talking to your team members, as well as when you're talking to your peers, in on the upper level, right? One of the first things I did when I joined the organization is I formed an SLT, a senior leadership team. So we got the VP of customer service, VP of HR, the controller. We all got together and said, okay, we are the team that's going to help make this organization better. And we started talking about servant leadership with their other team members. So we're trying to lift everybody up in the same way. And part of that, and even forming that, was listening to what the other VPs issues, what they were having, how they weren't being heard by the upper leadership, right? Why? Let's talk about that. Let's figure out where that's coming from. It's typical guys, and we're all guys here, right? Don't really listen with an empathetic ear.
What were you
Because
saying?
we're always trying to figure out how we're going to fix it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right?
No,
Right.
I know. Actually, my fiance told me this the other night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you listening? Do you not hear me?
It's
Yeah.
true, because our first instinct is to let's fix, right? We're already trying
yes.
to make plans on how to move things forward instead of listening to what the problem really is. Sometimes there are problems within an organization or within a team that can't be fixed right away.
Mm.
Right? You have to develop a strategy for moving forward and how you're going to move forward. And sometimes that strategy means it's going to take you months and months of listening to someone and understanding someone and getting into their heads before you can even get it fixed.
So let me ask then something. And I need you to listen. If I am taking months and months and months to listen to whatever this issue might be so that I can actually generate some sort of empathetic ear, is that amount of cost in waiting beneficial to listen and wait for that long to then strategize and make a decision later rather than just make small quick fixes right now? You see what I'm saying? If I'm waiting to take action, have you seen that in a data, economic, financial sense, whatever it might be, is more beneficial to wait and listen in the servant leadership until you really round it all out, the whole picture,
Right.
and then create that action? Or is it better to just take the quick fix right now and just keep doing many of those in progression?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So you're assuming that in order to be empathetic, in order to listen, you got to do all that listening up front, right?
Mhm.
And during that time, you're not making course corrections as you go along. So just like my lead network engineer, I still have to actively listen to him. I still have to help him coach him through some things on response rates as an example and stuff in that matter. So, even though you're actively listening, even though you're trying to be empathetic and you're learning about that person, you're helping them course correct along the way, or you're taking little actions and building upon them so that they gain more and more confidence.
Got
right?
it.
And they feel validated as you walk through the journey, so that at the end of the day, the month, the year, whatever the case is, they've built up this confidence. They have confidence in you. They have confidence in themselves, and so on, right? I mean, so it's not a matter of, it's going to take me months to get to this point. It's a matter of what quick hits do I need to get as we build up his confidence, as we understand where this team is coming from or that person is coming from. So you could do both.
So Bob, whenever you're, because I think this is really important for leaders to understand this, because what Alexander was saying just now is everybody's looking at, the here and the now, cost, ROI, and then everybody's thinking, especially when it comes to servant leadership, I need to come in, I need to make an impact. This organization is wanting me to, I need to change things, and so they come in with this mindset of, I'm the CEO, I'm the CTO, whatever it may be. It's my way or the highway. And then they just start, firing people, replacing people with people that they trust, because it's a lot easier than building those relationships. So whenever a leader comes into a new organization, what type of priority should they be meeting with people, having lunches with them, like, kind of in a more of a micro way? What are some of the things that you've done when you've come in an organization to be able to understand, to get the ball rolling kind of quickly?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. There are times when you have to cut people loose, right? I mean, you get
Right.
to a certain point with someone and no matter what you're doing, it's time to say this is no longer a good fit, either for you or for me. And we're just being detrimental to each other. But that being said, the first thing that I absolutely always do is sit down and start having some conversations. And it's not a one-way conversation, right? It's not about me sitting down with Drew and saying to him, this is my philosophy, this is how I see things going, this is my vision for the future, right? He doesn't want to hear that. He wants to know that I'm going to sit down and say, Drew, what is your vision for the future? How do you see things going? Where do you see improvements need to be made, right? And what can I do for you to help you achieve those goals? What can I do for you to help you become a better network administrator, et cetera, et cetera?
Because he's taking ownership of the company then.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think most employees, depending on the organization itself and the culture in the organization itself, most team members want to take some kind of ownership. They want to have some skin in the game because it's their future as well, too. So you have to give them that opportunity.
The if you're handing out that opportunity, how is it that you've said, okay, here's the responsibility, I've kind of dished it out? How do you follow up or verify upon that responsibility? I've spent, an earlier part of my career doing a lot of consulting. And when I open up these doors to say, okay, I'm going to empower you as individuals to sort of take this action. Let's talk about what actionable things we can do. But what we find is for the first couple of months, it's more a function of complaining. But I think there was actually an educational process that actually has to happen in this. So it's like, all right, listen, this is not here where we can come as a group and commiserate. We need to find an actionable plan to solve these things within this workplace so that we can elevate what it means coming to work and elevate that business itself. Now, have you found that you run into that when you actually bring about the servant leadership? Because when you give someone a podium, they could be just filibustering all day about every issue in the corporation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And if you're not careful, it will, you go down a rabbit hole, right? If you let, if it becomes just a list of complaints about what's wrong, then it becomes unproductive. So, right. And I actually, one of the things that I do when we have these conversations is I allow that to happen for a short period, right?
Okay.
At some point you have to say, okay, you know what? I understand these are very valid points. How do we move forward from there? What are your ideas on moving forward from there? What can you do to make it better? What can I do to help you make it better? Right.
And that's where the deer in the headlights is. They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
this is what you wanted me to talk about after?
Right. Yeah, they do it. And none of this happens in one meeting. This might take 2 or 3, but the more you repeat that, the more you come in like that, wanting to stick out your hand and hold them, right, and helping them move forward, the easier it becomes down the road. They become less and less fearful of speaking their minds.
That's
right.
No,
Then they become fantastic. Less and less worried that whatever comes out of their mouth is going to lose them their job.
So let's say you've done that and you're at the point, and maybe it's a month and a half in, and they make a mistake. They've taken ownership as an employee. They're doing well, but in this process, they make a mistake. And I've seen this happen too. It's like, yeah, I do servant leadership. I'm a servant leader. Minute they make a mistake, they're axed or
cut them loose.
Yeah. Or they penalize them, throw them in jail for a period of time, or they get into, I had a leader once tell me, well, once they make a mistake, I don't trust them anymore. So, what happens? What's the coaching process, or what do you do specifically when someone makes a mistake?
Yeah, that's and to me, that's the exact opposite of servant leadership. Just to cut someone loose because they made one mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. I don't care how successful you are, right? As a leader, you're going to stumble. You're going to trip somewhere along the line, and you better expect that your teammates that you serve are going to do that as well. And then it becomes a matter of saying, okay, how do we get past this? Where any mistake that you made is a good opportunity to learn. Right.
Yes.
When you make an error, forced or unforced, There's an opportunity for you to learn there. Let's take a look at it and let's learn from it. And how do we avoid it moving forward?
Interesting.
Now, if you have an employee or a team member, a teammate that is chronically making the same mistake over and over again, suddenly we get into the very definition of insanity, right? Then we have to take steps to make it a little more formalized, right? Then we do what we call a PIP, performance improvement program, right? And then we make that time-based to make those goals time-based so that we can actively work on correcting whatever that behavior, negative behavior may be.
So can I jump in here on the PIP?
Sure.
For the individual that's doing well, they make one mistake. Oh, did you recognize that error? Fantastic.
Right.
Now, for the PIP, that seems like something very quantitative. Okay, Jim, Joe, Bob, whatever your name might be. You've made this error on this date this many times, and it's been repeated at this sort of frequency. Is it only at the point when it starts to repeat itself is when you put a quantitative data point down, or do you actually hit it on the first point? It's like, you did make an error here, but you recognized it. The reason I'm stating that is the first one seems very qualitative for reviewing that individual and that error and speaking with them. But it leaves no data point for remembrance, right? So it may happen again and they may correct it again. There may be an error and a correction, but they can error and correct all day long without ever being recorded. But the guy that chronically commits errors, that's the one that gets the PIP and it becomes a quantitative data point. Do you find that you're creating a data point for both? And do you create measures for both states?
Yeah, we do. So when there's an error, especially because I'm dealing with people who are writing code, right? When we have errors like that pop up, we sit and talk about it and we document it, right?
Okay.
We document what the resolution was. We documented how we fixed it, and then I bring it back up again when it comes to the annual review. Hey, you recognize this, you took care of this, nice job, kind of thing. It's the ones where we repeat over and over and over again, that here's this mistake you keep making it. How do we change this? The guy that's chronically late, right? At one time I had a teammate who every time he walked by his desk, he'd literally be sleeping. Literally be sleeping. And
he needs some coffee with Bob.
Yeah, exactly. And then now this is years ago. This is nothing new. But this is years ago when I was at a different organization, and he would literally be sleeping. And I get complaints from people all the time saying, I walked over and he was sleeping. So we sat down, we had a conversation. Okay, why is this happening? You have a vitamin deficiency? Are you not getting enough sleep at night? Are you staying up all night gaming? What's going on? And we thought we got to the crux of it. And then a couple days later, boom, back to napping again. And, it happened so many times that we actually had to sit down with HR and put together a program that says, okay, you're not going to do this anymore. We have to get you some kind of help some way or another.
Bob, don't be so cold. He's narcoleptic.
Well, you know what? I actually asked that question. I said, have you ever talked to your doctor about narcolepsy? And he didn't. But
he didn't remember.
Again, this is a good example. We eventually had to let him go.
Yeah, well, that happens. So, so that's my point, right? People tend to think that data is cold, but the way, Jason and I look at data, the way we at TARTLE look at data, we're trying to educate the world on the fact that we all require benchmarks of remembrance. And these benchmarks of remembrance allow us to look at these things as errors, not sins or things that are permanent, but points in our own time where we can actually evolve. We can integrate with that error and say, okay, I did actually learn from that. And by elevating that approach and using data as that record for it are things that can help elevate the aspects of servant leadership. It can elevate the culture inside of a company. It can help elevate the climate of our planet. So I think the aspects of data within servant leadership are almost one and the same for how we look at data with everything else. And I think the way that applies is broad spectrum. So I just want to make sure that those data points are touched. And it's not something that is cold. It's just a function of learning. And it's a more effective way for us to learn. And it's not so that we can hurt somebody or tell them they're doing a bad job. It's like, hey, let's try and recognize this error. Let's actually try and evolve with what's going on through our behaviors.
Yeah. So it becomes a great tool as a leader too when you bring that back. So we do quarterly reviews. I don't do annual reviews. We do quarterly reviews. So we can always level set as to what's going on. And during the quarterly review, I like to bring up the fact that, hey, this happened or that happened, and here's how we corrected it. Now look how good everything is going. As another opportunity to not only let them know what their learning was on that, but also to give praise, so that you getting that positive reinforcement in there, that that behavior's been corrected and they're doing good and their growth is continuing. And you won't have that if you don't document it.
That's correct. And have you found that people are responsive in a positive format?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're all humans, right? It's part of our human nature to like to be praised.
Yeah.
Right?
Joke's on you. I came from outer space.
Even aliens like to be praised.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. So, because one thing I want to, because we have a few questions left before we end the podcast, but one thing that I have found interesting is a lot of leaders will say they don't have time.
Yeah.
Like I am so busy putting out fires and I have so many issues going on and we're in so many meetings. I don't have time to sit down with somebody once a quarter, or I don't have time to course correct this. What would you say about prioritizing time?
Yeah, I think those leaders that come out and say, I'm too busy, I don't have time, shame on them. You always have to make time for the individuals that you're working with. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes. You have to make that time. And I think if you can't find a few minutes a day to talk to the people that report to you, if only just to say good morning and give them a pat on the back in the days when we actually went to the office, or like on Zoom. I mean, I call my team members every morning. First thing I do in the morning, send them a text that says, good morning. Hope you're having a great day. And then right around the 8 o'clock hour Central, I pop in on a Zoom meeting with them just to see how they're doing, making sure they're okay. It takes me 5 minutes. And, even though it's a pandemic and everyone's business is kind of decreased a little bit, we're still just as busy, right? But you have to make that time. And I shame on any leader who feels like they're too busy or too important enough to take the time to touch base with their teammates.
I got to start calling some people. I think I can bring this into family life too.
Well, you can. I mean, it takes little time to say good morning on a text, even.
Yeah.
It's just so easy, and the benefits that you get from it, and the reactions that you get back from your team members, it's incalculable, right? I mean, you just don't know how you're impacting them.
Yeah, no, I love those big asymmetric gains from like doing something so small but so positive.
Yeah, it's the little things, right? I mean, kindness, people underrate kindness, right? There are leaders out there who see kindness as a weakness. Oh, I'm letting people walk all over me. And I would argue that it's not. Kindness is actually a strength, and kindness is contagious. So the more that you put yourself out there to your teammates and to your organization, the more that you support others, the more that you serve others, that kind of trickles out throughout the organization.
Yeah.
I love that. And Bob, for sake of time, I want to make sure that we're respectful of that with you. Is there a way that people can what's the best way somebody can get a hold of you, or if they want to learn more about servant leadership? Do you have a podcast?
I have, it's sort of a video podcast that I do on LinkedIn. And I have a YouTube channel now, and actually doing on Facebook as well. It's called Coffee with Bob. And I'd like to have you guys on someday. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Put the mug in there for the plug before you get going. There we go. Coffee with Bob. That's what I like to say.
I do Coffee with Bob, and it's not really a podcast based on servant leadership. It's a podcast that gives me the opportunity to feature other people, to feature them, their products, their services, whatever it is that they want to talk about. I've had people that Michelle Mazzara, who makes her own spices, love a foodie. It's all natural, all GMO friendly, and all that good stuff. I've had people out there who are pushing or selling their consulting services,
cool,
right? Marketing services, empowerment services. I've had marriage counselors on. I've had a business psychic on.
We got to get you the Dalai Lama.
Business psychic.
We got to get the Dalai Lama on there.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. It was interesting. But the point isn't about me. The point is about them and featuring them, so that they can get exposed to a wider network of people, and maybe even a different network of people.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you've made the servant leadership in a digital format. It's not so much a podcast. I think you've taken the format you use in the workplace that works well, and you've opened it up to the public. And I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I try. I really do believe in it and try to push it as much as possible.
No, that's phenomenal. Well, listen, Robert, thank you again for coming on. Everybody, please check out the Boomerang Carnets, our Chief Information Officer, and listen in to Coffee with Bob live on LinkedIn when you have a moment.